basic prosthetic rundown. So if you're an amputee and you've just gone through the amputation process, there's a lot of different trains of thoughts as to how we rehabilitate you. How soon do we start? And that's probably a good question to answer, is how quickly can I be back on a prosthesis? And it's a difficult answer for me to give, because it depends on your specific situation. It depends on the reason for the amputation. If you are a vascular patient, for example, and you battle with blood circulation, it's going to take you longer to rehabilitate, so the wounds are going to take longer to heal. So it's difficult for me to place a time frame on it. If it's been a traumatic amputation, you're a young patient, for example, we could have you in a prosthesis as quickly as 4 weeks after the surgery. So it can be really, really quick. That does, however, only happen very seldom. It's usually vascular complications, so it usually takes a bit of time. In general, we look at about 3 months. So from the day of amputation till the day that we can fit your prosthesis is usually about a 3-month period. And within that period, that includes the healing of the wounds following the amputation itself. And then we start with what we call a coning process. So once they've done the amputation, your muscles are still fairly large, for lack of a simpler word, and we need to shape those muscles and get them conducive to fitting a prosthesis. You could imagine if I sit with your calf muscle, which is a nice big muscle, and we amputate that, you could imagine you've got this big bulbous bunch of muscles that we need to make smaller, that it can fit inside a residuum, and that takes a bit of time. So that is the coning phase that we go through. There's lots of trains of thought with regard to how to do the coning. Some people like doing an immediate post-operative fitting. We are a little bit on the side of being more conservative, so I like leaving my patients that they first heal. We first make sure that all the sutures and the clips are out of the wounds, that there's no infections, there's no complications before we start with the coning process. Once we start with the coning process, we are quite deliberate with that. I'm quite full of nonsense. I don't want to make your initial diagnostic prosthesis, and within a week, because we haven't done a proper coning process, your residuum or your stump shrinks and your leg no longer fits you properly. So we're quite diligent with the coning process. We usually cone our patients anything from 2 to 4 weeks after the amputation, and then we start with the diagnostic fitting process. When I talk about diagnostic fitting, it's our test phase. We test all our prosthetics before we do the final prosthesis. That involves making a test leg or a diagnostic prosthesis, and that prosthesis is actually reinforced and you actually sent home with it for a week or two, depending on your activity levels, etc., etc. And then we can then decide whether we're going to make your final prosthesis, or do we need to tweak it? Do we need to heat it? Do we need to bend it? Do we need to change alignments? There's a whole bunch of dynamics that goes into that. During that process, you're going to be seeing us quite regularly, tweaking everything, making sure you're walking as well as you possibly can before we make the final prosthesis itself.